Welcome to PEAC, Train Like a Girl, a podcast by girls in sport for girls and coaches in sport. We're here to amplify your voice because it deserves to be heard. Here at PEAC, we are a safe place for girls to hang out, learn, grow, and build community. We empower girls in sport and coaches with the knowledge, resources, and support we think is necessary in today's athletic environments to thrive. Join us for bold conversations about the experience of girls in sport. Our discussions will make you laugh, cry, cheer, maybe get confused, or rethink the future of girls in sport for generations to come. Whether you're walking, commuting, cleaning your bedroom, take us with you. Follow us because it helps more than you can imagine, and check out our website, and please share with a female athlete or coach you love. Today's episode is different than it usually is because I have the privilege of interviewing Annemarie Sampson. Right now, I'm Caitlin Guyevich. I am Sampson's intern for the summer, and I'm so thrilled to switch roles with Sampson and be able to talk to her today.
So fun.
So awesome. Okay, so I think probably people that have listened to the podcast probably know a little bit about Sampson, but she is truly an amazing coach. She has such a background with so many things in sports, fitness, health, nutrition, yoga, just really has had so many great experiences that has shaped the woman that she is today. So I'm so excited to be able to talk to her more about everything. So let's get warmed up, Sampson. I'm going to start with some questions. The first one being, would you prefer to go out or ordering food in?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I'm doing order in.
Awesome. What's your pick for ordering in?
I knew you were going to ask. We don't ever order in. But we do go pick up pizza sometimes. And you know what else we do pick up sometimes? It's time. But I don't think I've ever had food delivered to the house.
That's good. Honestly, I mean, takeout is no matter how you get it there, it's still good.
That's true. I don't have to do the dishes or think of it. So
Right. Next question I am excited to hear about because when you were coaching cross country, when I was on the team, you always had a coffee order that I was interested about. So I just didn't know if you had a go-to drink right now.
That's another really good one. So in the morning, first thing, black coffee. That's my jam.
Awesome.
I do 1 cup. I don't need more than that, but I love it. I really look forward to it. Another one of our interns, Sarah, stopped drinking coffee when she went to a teacher training in India a few months ago. And so she's trying to convince me if I switch to like hot tea or that mushroom hot chocolate, I'll be okay. I'm not convinced.
Yeah.
I think I'm not going to be okay. But during the summer, we've invested in our own espresso machine, which I love.
Oh,
so I do
wow.
iced. Yeah, it makes such a difference. And I feel like I'm like saving for my retirement much more efficient. And I'm also saving the planet, I think. So I do ice in the summer. So ice, soy milk, shot of espresso, and cinnamon. And in the winter, I just steam the milk instead. And then I can sometimes get a little more creative. Turmeric is something I've been playing with.
Oh, yeah.
In my hot lattes. And I think that's kind of fun. So those are my go-tos.
Super fun. Well, I didn't know you had an espresso machine. Don't be surprised if I'm over for breakfast tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Stop on by.
All right. So that was the warm up. I wanted to get started and ask how your journey with sports began.
Oh man. So, when you were like, before we started, Caitlin was laughing like, oh, it's so weird to be on this side. It's equally as weird to be on this side. So my journey with sport is, I think it's different than people probably perceive it to be. It's more complex, I think, than I would like it to be. So I don't talk about my story a lot. But when I was a young girl, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. I'm 62 years old. So, 55 years ago, I was 10. It was right when Title IX was passed. And it didn't make a huge impact, I don't think, or a huge splash. It wasn't something people talked about. Playground time for us was different than what it looked like for the boys. There were the fitness tests, which I think they've done away with some of those. I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't climb a rope and I couldn't really do a push up. And so I never really felt comfortable in my own skin, but I knew I loved being outdoors. And I really appreciate from my parents that they gave us exposure to that. So we had opportunity to be outdoors in Canada or outdoors in Utah, and that's for sure where I felt most at home. And I did love tennis. I played tennis. And again, I was fortunate that my parents were able to give me, or they didn't give me, but they paid for me to have tennis lessons. And so tennis was one of the sports that girls could definitely do. So swimming and tennis. And so I was able to do those things. And I didn't necessarily find a ton of pleasure in those type of sports. Body image and what you look like was something that was really important in my family of origin. And I never really looked, I mean, we talk a lot about this, which is why I think I'm more sensitive to the word look. I never quote unquote looked athletic or looked fit, which both you and I know isn't really a thing.
Right.
Fitness isn't a look, health isn't a look. But there was a lot of pressure on me as a young girl to lose weight. My mom put me on a lot of diets. I never really understood why, to be honest with you. I was never unhealthy, but as I grew into adulthood, I knew that it was something that my mother valued. And certainly if you grew up when she grew up, it was something that was valued. And so she was just reparenting what she had learned. So my relationship was challenging. It was always, if you moved, you got a reward, or if you didn't move, then you didn't get a reward. And the reward would be, food. You could, replace. So that was a struggle for me. And I didn't really understand that. And then as I migrated into adulthood, I came to realize, issues with eating disorders and disordered eating and calorie restriction and this kind of exchange. If you do this, then you get that. And again, because of the privilege I had, I was the first girl in my family to go off to college. I was the first girl.
Oh my goodness.
My mother didn't have that opportunity, and her sisters and parents didn't. So I was able to go off to college, and there was a lot of good that happened in my 4-year college experience. And I think there were some things that weren't great, but I did get a lot more exposure to this thing called exercise science and food science. And what does that really look like? And, while I was in college, this thing called aerobics came into the forefront of what girls were given the opportunity to do. There were these big, huge aerobic classes, and people wore leotards and leg warmers. It was hilarious, but I did all that. And I became a certified instructor while I was in college. I was able to make some money doing that. And I really enjoyed all of that. I loved the energy. I loved the way it made me feel. And I was able to gain some perspective on, body image and what bodies look like and what it really means to be strong. And, shortly, somewhere around that time, probably after graduating from college, I picked up running, and I loved the freedom that it gave me. And I loved being able to explore and to go out. And I didn't really understand a lot about running. There certainly weren't running watches, and there wasn't Strava, and there weren't a ton of running clubs, but there was this thing out there called the Chicago Marathon, which looks very different than it looks today. And I thought, oh, I can run forever. I can do this thing called the Chicago Marathon. And I did. I'm not really sure how I did it. I don't know how I trained, but I certainly was fit enough to be able to do that. And I did discover a love for running and for distance running and for trail running and ultras. And I've completed more than most people can probably count number of marathons and half Ironmans and trail runs. And I really derived a ton of pleasure from it. And that industry, that running industry, became more and more sophisticated. And so paired with my expertise in strength training and mobility, I was able to really kind of, hone in on a profession that I fell in love with. I love educating young women about the joy of running and the joy of moving your body and the joy of being in a group, and also the hard, right? Because sometimes it's hard and sometimes you push yourself, beyond what you think you can push yourself. And I love where we are in this industry right now because we are really able to have much broader and more open conversations about what it means to be an athlete. So that is my summary of 55 years of being an athlete.
Well, there's so much that you said that is just so amazing, but also things that, even though I've known you, I think for now 5 or 6 years, I still had no idea. So I'm glad that I'm able to learn still so much about you and your experience with sport and running. And one of the things that really stands out is how you grow up with a confusion of diet culture or just restrictive eating that you don't realize can be harmful to you until you're older and realize how it was detrimental to health or your mentality. And I'm just so glad that it's come so far along where I think there's, even though it's not perfect, I think that there's a lot more acknowledgement of healthy eating and making sure that athletes are fueling their body rather than restricting themselves. And that's something that especially you always were so good about talking with during cross country. So I think that's a really important part that you talked about. And also talking about the freedom that running gave you, because you really are never too late in life to start running, I think. I think it's just such a beautiful thing because it really does not require crazy equipment. You can pick it up by yourself and just, it can give you so many opportunities. So it's just still inspiring that even though you didn't grow up with cross country or track, you still were able to implement running to be such a crucial component of your life. So I think that's really awesome. Next question I had with you was just asking you to tell us more about your certificates or some of the side training that you've done and how it's kind of impact what you do today. One that stands out to me is your awesome knowledge of yoga. That's one of the favorite things I love doing with you. If you want to talk a little bit more about your many talents.
Yeah. So it's an interesting industry, the fitness industry. And I'm not sure you know it, and I'm not sure actually most people know. So in the United States, coaches don't have to be certified, which is hilarious to me. So, anybody can call themselves a coach. You don't have to have any qualifications there's I think in the state of Illinois, you have to take a concussion. You have to pass that concussion test, which I think the kiddos all have to do too. And I think we have to have a CPR certification. But the point is that it's a crazy industry. And even the fitness industry, you don't have to have a degree in exercise science or physical therapy or nutrition. You don't even have to have a college degree. You can go out and do nothing, or you can kind of gather these certifications. So the fitness industry is an unregulated industry, meaning it kind of does its own thing. And so different modalities within that, like yoga, if you're going to be part of an alliance or part of a group, and the benefits of doing that is that's how you get insured and certified and basically vetted. You take these classes and you go through this certification process. So throughout, the very first one I did was my group exercise certification. And I did that, like I said, while I was still in college. And then after graduating from college, I actually opened my own gym, which I don't think a lot of people knew, in the city of Chicago and right above Goose Island Brewery. It was amazing. But I came to realize pretty quickly that making a living teaching group exercise was hard.
Right.
So it was a tough way to earn an income. So I got my personal training certification, was just in its infancy. And so I was one of the, very first people in the city of Chicago to get that. So that was also pretty exciting. And while I was doing all that, there was this different group of people that were doing this thing called yoga. And to be really honest with you, Caitlin, I didn't buy into it at first. I thought, what are these people doing laying on the ground? And what's going on here? I didn't quite understand it. But I met this amazing woman who was living in the States from Germany. And I went through a yoga teacher training with her. And it forever changed my life, to be honest with you. And maybe not at that time, although there were parts of it that changed me. But over the decades since then, the practice of yoga has really changed me. It has put me more in tune with myself, which I think I needed to be. And I think a lot of people need to be more in tune with themselves. It gave me a lot more permission to be able to slow down and understand the value of that. There's this thing out there called breath. I mean, so yoga is the practice of breath. I think I have a lot of growing to do, quite frankly, in that piece of it. And it's something that I am interested in and want to continue learning about. And then there's this modality called meditation, and I'm super excited to take a deeper dive into that. I'm really excited that we're offering meditation through a certified meditation coach on our app. I'm really going to take advantage of that. So it's been exciting. The science of diet was another kind of gateway for me. My nutrition certification. So I'm also certified in athletes nutrition. But the science of diet just really, the teacher really took her time and put a lot of really good energy and effort into understanding where does the stigma around food and body come from, and how can we change it, and what are the cultural implications, and how do we work towards moving through that. And so that was something that was really important to me, and she did a great job with it. And then the one other certification that I want to talk about that I did, I think it's been 6 years now, was I went and studied at the Digital Wellness Institute, which is an online institution, and it's global. There's people in my cohort. There were people from India and people from the UK and Australia and Africa. It was amazing. I was in the very first cohort, the very first class that graduated from the Digital Wellness Institute. And I think there were 36 of us. And I knew something was going on with my high school athletes, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, although I thought it was this funny thing called a cell phone. And just diving into the research and listening to the professionals around what technology, although it has many, many benefits, how it can also be potentially harming us, and how then circling back something like yoga, meditation, breath work, fitness, how that can improve people's relationship, not just with themselves now, but also their relationship with technology. So that's some of my certifications. They all seem, I think, splintered, but they all, I think, synergetically work together really well.
100%. I think not only do they work together, but it's so beneficial to have as much knowledge and diversity of topic that you can, because you went from yoga, science of diet, digital wellness, even though they're not all in the same type of category, they've all contributed to the work you're doing, the coaching you're doing, to overall forward women's health, women's sports, which is so important because you're not just staying in one lane. I think it's so crucial that as there's more information coming out and there's new things evolving, like the cell phone that wasn't as prominent in people's lives like so many years ago, but now it's such a big topic of conversation. It's so crucial to keep learning and being able to educate yourself to benefit coaches and athletes. So I think that's, again, really awesome. And talking more about coaching, I wanted to specifically ask you just to talk a little bit about your journey of coaching, specifically cross country, and how it's impacted your life.
Oh, I have to give a shout out to Bill Etnier, who you probably don't even know ET now at this point, right?
No, yeah, I missed his years.
He has missed his years. So I'm constantly shouting him out. So I think it's been about 15 years now. So about 15 years ago, this young man who was called ET, who I then came to realize he had a name called Bill Etnier, who is now one of my dear friends as his wife. But he came to me and was coaching girls cross country and said, "Hey, listen." And he was way ahead of his time and said, "Listen, I know you practice yoga, you teach yoga." I'm not really even sure how he knew that. I'm going to have to ask him that one day. And he said, "Would you come?" He was really struggling. As you are well aware, cross country can be a mental mind game.
Sure.
Like it can be, it is a crazy sport because you're a team, but really you're competing by yourself. And then you're also competing for a spot. And it can be a tricky place. And he had some really high performing athletes and he had some trickiness. And I think he thought yoga was going to do a couple things. I think he thought it was going to help with injury prevention. And I think he thought it was going to help just give the girls a break from this constant competition with each other. And he was right. There wasn't a lot of research or data at that time specific to sport and yoga. Since then, there is, so I have an athletes and yoga certification now, but I think that's only 7 or 8 years old. It's a relatively new phenomenon, understanding really the essence of the mind-body connection. So he was way ahead of his time, to be honest with you. And so he asked me to come and be a part of this. And I was working with these two other amazing, Kuz and Shanebeck, and you probably don't know them because I'm not using their married names, I don't think.
I've had Shanebeck as a teacher, and she was
nice,
awesome.
Amazing, right? Yeah. So I met these amazing women. I got to be a part of this thing called Girls Cross Country. And it just never left. I just stayed. And then at some point, a couple years in, this thing, called strength training, which I've been doing my entire career as a job. But people started to realize the value of strength training, and not just for boys or men, but also for women, and what that looked like and how it helped with recovery and performance and injury prevention. And he knew I had an area of expertise there. And, he was really committed to giving the girls that ran on that team every opportunity to succeed, which I really appreciated about him. And so I helped design some of the strength programming for the team, and it allowed me a little more connection to them, and which was amazing. And then eventually a spot came open for a more full-time position under Coach Reif and with Coach Sharp. And yeah, and then the rest is kind of history. I've been with the program in a full-time capacity now ever since. So that's it.
Yeah, really, I really didn't know how you were originally connected. And I remember you talking about your connection through yoga, which is so funny because that's one of my favorite parts about being in cross country, because as we said, it was a pretty mentally difficult sport. And I remember working on breath work and having a mantra, and multiple different things that were taught through yoga were really helpful and beneficial to my sports performance. So it really is awesome to hear how that can benefit athletes. Continuing talking about your coaching, I wanted to ask how you've seen women's sports evolve throughout your time with coaching, like something that has really stood out to you, maybe even good or bad.
Yeah, I think that We are for sure in a better place today than we were when I was a 15-year-old girl. There is absolutely no doubt. And I think we have a long ways to go.
For sure.
There's still very little science when it comes to female athletes and performance and recovery and health, which you keep talking about. And that means period health, and that means bone health, and that means being able to get pregnant and going through perimenopause in a way that feels healthy, and going into menopause. All of those things matter, and we are trying to have those conversations, and yet they're still really taboo. We do not see nearly enough female coaches in female sport, and we certainly don't see them in male sports. I think that's a problem, and I think it's problematic. I don't think people say that, and I always wonder why people don't say it. But I think it's important to have representation, and I think that female coaches serve a really important role and resource. And I think they are as and maybe even more qualified than some of the men that are in those positions. I know at the high school level, I think it's challenging for a woman to be a coach, particularly a head coach, because the time is demanding. I don't think people really realize that. I think people think, oh, you're at practice for 2 hours, or you're in the meet for 4 or 5 hours. And it's demanding. It is way more demanding than what people see. And, when you work a full-time job, because you certainly can't make a living just coaching, you couldn't put a roof over your head. So you have to be doing something else. That definitely gets more challenging. So I think we've come a long way. I think women support women so much better today than they did even 20 years ago. I think women are each other's cheerleaders. I have made so many incredible, awesome professional connections, and it literally warms my heart. People are willing to jump in and help, add value. And that, to me, is super important. I think we need more money in female sports, and that includes at the coaching level. I don't think female coaches make enough money, particularly when you compare them to the salaries of men. I think that's a problem. So I'd like to see some of that change. I think where we are seeing women have a stronger position and a stronger voice are in clinicians. And that would be things like doctors, physical therapists, registered dietitians. You see more and more women going into those roles. And so they are supporting coaches and they are supporting athletes. And I think there's a larger willingness for those clinicians to dive in, even though they're not being paid, and come and talk to a local high school or meet with a high school athlete. And that, to me, is something coaches didn't used to have access to. But I call professionals all the time now and say, hey, would you be willing to do a workshop or come talk to our kids or help me put together a handout? And I think that's changed. And I think there's much more collaboration and cooperation than ever before.
Absolutely. Going back to what you said about female coaches, as someone who I've had a lot of male coaches, but throughout high school and cross country, I had 3 female coaches. And it really, for me, made such a difference being able to talk to them specifically about women's health. And I really think I wish that more girls in sport had access to having a woman's coach, because it really can make such a big difference. So I really hope to see that throughout the time that I'm able to watch female sports. I think we should start cooling down now, because I have a couple questions that I really have been dying to ask you.
Right.
One being, I know you have many favorite coaching memories, but if you could narrow it down to one favorite in specific.
Nice. That is really tough. Oh man, that's really tough. That really is hard, because I feel like I have made some of the most amazing connections and relationships with other coaches and with my athletes. But if I was really going to be honest and step away and, forget about what it might look like from the outside, I think to not recognize the moment that we as a program qualified for state 4 years ago for the first time in, I can't remember, but it was a long time. And may have been 15, 16, 17 years. I think that would be like a misstep, because the excitement and the joy and the celebration, and also kind of like the relief, like you got the monkey off your back, was so rewarding on so many levels. It was amazing to see the girls' reaction. It was amazing to see the other coaches' reaction. I was shocked at how emotional it made me. I mean, I cried. And it wasn't that we won something. That wasn't it. So I do like winning. Like, I'm competitive. I want to win, but given the choice of everybody having the experience they need or winning and no one having an experience they need, I'm going to pick everyone having the experience they need every single time. And winning that or qualifying to go to the state tournament is something people will never forget.
1000%. Yeah. I mean, I love that you said that, because I had the privilege of being on that team, and it really is always will be such a special moment. And I can still 100% remember getting the news, and it was just such an emotional moment, just so special. And I still talk about it because it was just such a special experience to go through. So yeah, really special. Another question is one that you've asked me, and I've always wanted to know your answer to it. And it is, if you could excel at any sport of your choice, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, there's so many.
Gotta narrow it down.
There's so many. And actually, I'm a pretty good, I would say, better than average and probably better than most snowboard and skiers. So I'm not going to pick that, although it'd be super cool to be much better than I am. And I love the idea of like watching things like ice skating and gymnastics. And this is going to sound, again, people are not going to believe me, but I would love to have been a fast 16 or 32 100-meter runner. I would love to have understood what that felt like.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what I would have picked. I would love to know what it feels like to like run fast and excel at running.
Well, I think there's still time for Olympics qualification. There's nothing you can do, Sampson.
The Senior Olympics, here we go.
Okay, last cool down question I want to ask you, and I know you probably have lots of advice, but if you could choose any advice you feel prominent in your life right now, what would you want to tell female athletes that are listening to this podcast?
Oh, you know what? This isn't even that hard for me. I would tell female athletes who are on a team, and that means they're working with a coach, to shut out the rest of the noise. Close it down. Shut it out. Stop looking at TikTok. Stop looking at Instagram. Stop listening to your other coaches, your parents, other athletes. Like, shut it down. Because I am convinced if athletes buy into, even if they don't believe it, if they just buy into it, like pretend that you believe in it, like make believe as best you can in what your coach is telling you and how they are coaching you, I think every athlete can be successful. I really do believe it. I think the minute you start letting all those other voices come in, including your own, that's where people get themselves into trouble. So I would say, as kids are moving into their fall seasons, whether you're swimming or running cross country or playing flag football, listen to your coach and shut out the rest of the noise, and stop training with coaches and trainers when you're in season. Like, shut that all down and be where your feet are and stay with your team and be 100% all in.
I really think that's such good advice, especially with so much distraction going on and so many opportunities that you can, like, new coaches, new programs. It really is crucial to just put your head down and stick to one thing, stick to what you believe in. I think that's really good advice. I just want to say thank you, Samson, for allowing me to have a conversation with you about your journey with sports, your journey with overall wellness. It really is such a privilege for me to be able to talk to you about this a podcast. So I hope that people are able to learn more about who is usually doing most of the talking on the podcast. So I'm glad we were able to switch it up this time. And yeah, closing it down, do not forget to follow us, to share our episodes, this episode. Join us on Instagram at PEAC Train Like a Girl, and take a minute to explore the website. There will be links in the show notes to take you to the website and all things PEAC. And we really want to make a big announcement about the PEAC app that will be launching August 12th. There's so many really great content that is backed by science to benefit overall women's wellness. And we really want to give as many people those opportunities as we can. So we're so excited about our app being launched. There's information to get on a waiting list for the app that will be in the show notes. And we hope that you enjoy this episode and you share it with a female athlete or coach that you love.
Dude, you crushed it.
I hope. Thank you, Samson. I was kind of.
You crushed it. No, you totally crushed it.
Oh, good. I hope I did you justice and everything.
You did me justice. I think you should start, like, either we should start doing it together or we can alternate.